So my career in the fashion industry started roughly about 2003 with studies. So I studied fashion design, like most probably a lot of fashion designer in the industry. And afterwards, I did a lot of trainee programs with Hugo Boss. Like I did my diploma at Hugo Boss. I was in 2 different trainee programs, one for design, one for pattern making, and then was offered a job in the pattern making department. And my first job was doing trouser patterns for Hugo. Which I enjoyed particularly because I haven't had training, like practical sewing training before I started my studies. I come more out of a graphic area, more out of a design area than like lots of people in my course were basically coming out of a tailor's shop, you know. And I felt that I'm lacking technical knowledge. So I really enjoyed doing pattern making for 5 years. I did that, bottoms and tops, so jackets and trousers by the end of the day. But then also felt at some point that it was time to change back to design. So I changed the company. I went to Tommy Hilfiger in Amsterdam, and I overtook there the design for jackets and suits. And after, I think, 2 years, I was promoted being design manager and overtook also coats and trousers. And then another 2 years later, I was promoted to be design director of the whole Tommy Hilfiger Tailored lifestyle brand with all kinds of product group inside, which I don't want to lay out right now. And the year after my daughter was born, I took a year off because, first of all, I wanted to spend time with my daughter. But secondly, I also have to say that after 7 years in an American company, I just needed time off, you know. I was really exhausted, and started freelancing. Like 2018, I started freelancing again for several brands, and one of them was my old employer, Hugo Boss. And after 3/4 of a year, they offered me the position as vice president of design for clothing. And I did that the last 2 years until I decided roughly a year ago that it's time to leave again, and move to Portugal. And now I'm here living in Portugal with my wife. So I'm not completely crazy. She's Portuguese, you know. So we're living in Portugal, and I continue working on freelance basis for Hugo Boss and also other companies soon. And I enjoy to have more freedom, more time, more space in my life, and I will not be so much inside the whole kind of rat race of creating the collections. I think like working as a menswear designer, and especially like what I want to give to the students as a message in this lecture is that working as a menswear designer, and especially in big companies, is a lot of work outside being creative. It's a lot of work of politics. It's a lot of work of management. It's a lot of work of data management, and the creative process has its part, but it's always based on analysis. And like the lecture I'm going to give is really about that, the whole process of what it takes to make a menswear collection within a big corporation, including timelines, including how a design briefing should look, including how you work with numbers, because like by the end of the day, if you work in big corporations, you will always be brought down to the results. So what's in it underneath the line. So numbers are a huge factor of it. And I think, at least that was my case, I didn't understood that being in university. I just understood that when I started working in a big company, how like that the creative process is just a part of being a menswear designer, and that there's so much more that you need to know and understand and internalize to be able to do this job, you know. In the fashion industry nowadays, I think one of the key factors are circularity and sustainability. So for me, it comes down to basically four things where we're heading to, and that we're like heavily investing to do it. The first one is digitalization. So we're kind of trying to understand how we can transfer a process that used to be very analog and like cutting little fabrics, gluing them on boards, making sketches by hand into a completely digitized 3-dimensional world. Also in front of the background to save materials, to save time in the whole process of creating a collection from weaving, like that you, for example, like if you create digital fabrics, you know your quality, you don't need to weave every single design because you can have them as CADs, and I can have them weeks before things are woven, you know. So that's one thing. The second thing for me is, and I don't want to get too wide on that, but I think also like digitalization is a sustainability factor because you need to use less resources to make your collections. The second factor is consumer centricity. So really do your collections from the point of view of a consumer. The third one is customization. Customization and personalization will be like absolute mega key assets in the market. And the last one and most important one is sustainability and circularity. So there's huge efforts at the moment to turn around the fashion industry into a like more sustainable business model. And for me, it's also like if you work in a big corporation, one of the most funniest moments I had is that I set out in a meeting, well, the most sustainable thing we could do is to sell less clothes. But nobody in the industry wants that. So we need to find ways to make those clothes that we sell more sustainable, more long-lasting, that people can wear them longer, that they're adapt to more seasons than one, that the quality of the garment is higher. The second thing is that we need to take care about the resources. So basically working with resources, reusing resources, like thinking about leftover, thinking about wastage, and all of that should be part of the process, you know. And the next thing is circularity. And I've been in one circularity project, and it's hugely complicated to for like let's say for an example, a product like a trouser, to make it circular, because you have so many different materials and parts in it. You need to separate everything to get it into recycling. So I think the process is a long way still, because we have a lot of catching up to do in our industry, but I believe that change is an inside job, and that just the people from within the companies can work on that change and make the difference within the industry. So I can just urge any young person studying fashion design that sustainability will be one of the key factors that you need to invest time and knowledge in, and there's a lot to do.